Well, Edwina had come to me and wanted to be study for a PhD with me, and she was particularly interested in the psychological aspects of attendance at food banks. And as a biomedical scientist, what do I know about that? And so I asked her to look around the UCL to see if she could find someone, and she found Angel. So I got in touch with Angel and said, would you be interested in this? And we talked Turkey, and that's how the collaboration arose.
It was incredibly useful. It gave us the opportunity to set out our qualitative work early on, allowing us to both get Edwina to the places she needs to get to do the interviews, but more importantly to give the people we were interviewing some honorarium, some compensation for their time. That wasn't too much to swing what they were saying, but was just enough to say thank you for them being part of the study. We also put some money towards a public engagement event once we'd had that initial data, which was held at UCL, which was a really big success. And again, we were able to engage the Trussell Trust CEO, Chris Mauld, who came along, as well as actually some of our participants who came along, and we were able to pay for their expenses out of it. So really, really helpful.
Yes. And in the talk we gave earlier, I discussed the idea that people were hungry for data, because this is an area where there's a lot of opinion, but very little hard evidence. And that's really what this the Grand Challenge has pump primed, is the ability to build on this, to design as it were, a theoretical framework for what we think is happening on the basis of the qualitative research, and then to test it in sort of good old biomedical comparative experiment way.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'd always had a degree of disdain for qualitative research, because people weren't measuring stuff with machines or questionnaires.
Numbers.
And what astonished me was the theoretical framework that came out of it using COM-B, which was an organogram of how things join together, which is almost the same as the type of biochemical and metabolic organograms that we generate in nutrition. And my first thought when I saw this was, how did you do that with just 18 interviews? And it was astonishing. And having got that structure, we were then able to test it a little bit later. So it was a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah, and qualitatively we're able to do that early work. It's common in psychology to do qualitative work and then to test it later on. And for me, it was really helpful to be able to do that in a real-world setting where George and Edwina had already been, very influential in terms of working within food banks. And I think what also helped was bringing this multidisciplinary work together. We've been able to then go to policymakers and people who potentially take this work forward with different angles, and we can actually say, going back to COM-B that George just mentioned, we can actually say it's not just people's capability or motivation, which is often pitched as the reasons why people aren't eating well. It's not because they can't cook, it's not because they don't want to eat well, it's because of the opportunity that is afforded to them. So it enabled us to create a body of evidence from both sides to present it to people who could hopefully make a difference.
I think they've been taken up by other academics. So the research that we started in 2012, that was when Edwina started on her MSc research. We started in 2014, when it was all new. And since then, it has exploded. So in the early part of this week, I went to the first national conference on food poverty in the UK, over at King's. And we presented our data. And it's marvellous to see that there's now a constituency where researchers here can discuss data with each other. That's the first thing. What impact it has on policy makers, I don't know. I mean, they seem to do what they seem to do, and people in communications with politicians who are on the com side of politicians will say, well, it's always about damage limitation, falling on hand grenades. curing problems. So it's very hard to tell if it's having an impact on policy. Angel and Edwina and I were very keen to make sure we had the right arm's length relationship with them. So their job is to do their job, and our job as academics is to do our job. And we're not there as the PR arm of the charity. And so it's been quite a virtuous circle in that we've been able to suggest, well, these are the studies you need to do, this is how you do it, and these results are going to be quite substantial, and then you can use them. And I think that's...
Yeah, I think
they've agreed that that's been the case.
definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think one thing that has come from what we've been doing is also linked to the work Edwina does with her in her volunteering role around supporting people with Healthy Start, the Healthy Start scheme. So there's many people who attend Foodbanks who don't know that they're eligible for the Healthy Start scheme, and so Edwina has been sitting with over 50 Foodbank users to actually fill in the forms and submit them to is it Department of Work?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
To the extent where we were then invited to a meeting at the Department of Health to discuss taking some research forward to be able to allow food banks to be a central point for showing that people might be eligible for this.
Yes, that's right. So like Foodbanks Plus.
Yeah.
Foodbanks Plus. Almost certainly it's our master's students. So we have quite a large master's program in clinical and public health nutrition. And to give you an example, 30 of the students did a photographic survey of food bank food parcels, which have now been analysed in terms of dietary quality. And that has now been fed back in the form of a report to Trussell Trust, who are changing their policy for goods that they want donated to form nutritionally more optimal food parcels.